Welcome into TWMP Daily. Last week of session, drama unfolding, and we are joined by a couple folks that I think are in the behind the scenes on everything, and sometimes in the front. Mark Dalton, head of the Carpenters Union. Thank you so much for the time.
Glad to be here.
And thank you for the helmet. We've had the helmet in here since like the old studio. I mean, it goes back to the day.
It's beautiful. Happy to help decorate.
And Representative Betsy Vogel from Springfield. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Big news this week, right?
Big news, yep.
Tell us about it.
I'm running for state senate in Springfield Senate District that is being vacated by Senator Huff in 2026, and I announced on Monday that my name will be on the ballot.
So you almost, no matter what, you're almost going to have to be an improvement, right?
I would never say that about my senator.
So you have another term left. You could run for the House, right?
Yep, that's right.
So you're making a decision to forego your final term.
I am.
To run for the state senate. It is a time of change in Springfield.
It is.
There's Cliff Smart was sort of the leader of Springfield. I always thought, in my view, Jim Anderson was the leader for a long time. Then Cliff Smart took that mantle up, and for 10 years, Cliff was kind of the focal point of everything Springfield. With Cliff retiring, now you have Jeff Schrag coming into the mayor's office. That's kind of a new face for Springfield. But really, that I think Senator Huff has elevated that position in the state capitol and in the city of Springfield as one that delivers. I mean, you in ways, in all seriousness, you are running in an important time for Springfield and with pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Senator Huff has done more good for Springfield than in my life than I can't think of anybody else who's done more, bringing home investments, supporting our public schools, supporting his party, but breaking from his party when it makes sense for Springfield. And I think elected officials should do more of that.
You know, Mark, I'm not sure, and part of it's circumstance. I mean, when the federal government gives you $2 billion to spend, you're a better approach chair. I'm not sure there's not been, I think he's got a claim on the best appropriations chairman post-term limits.
Yeah, he's done a great job. Every year gone in, delivered, helped where he needs to help and where he can help. He has been great and got another year, but he'll be missed and they will be big shoes to fill. Betsy's done a great job in the House, shown leadership on the budget as a ranking member, and she'll do great following in those footsteps.
I want to get back to the Senate race, but I think first, we have Missouri lost a legend yesterday. One of the greatest statesmen in the history of Missouri, Kit Bond, passed away. I don't want to get sappy about it, but I do think it was almost fitting that when the news broke of Senator Bond's passing, it was Senator Huff and Senator Brown on the floor talking about, oddly enough, the hospital in Salem, Missouri. If you could imagine the kind of thing Kit Bond would care about. Now I know all your House colleagues don't really care about the hospital in Springfield, but the House Republicans don't care.
I was going to say, I'm going to correct you on that.
I thought it was very fitting that when that news broke, two people that actually care about this state in the way Kit Bond did were on the Senate floor, and they were discussing a project that is just the kind of thing Kit Bond would have cared about.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I have respect for any elected official who has respect for the institution and wants good things for our state. And I think, to your point, those two senators talking about a vitally important investment in that moment was, a beautiful thing, a testament.
Mark, you go from Cahokia to Pineville. You go from Rockport to Caruthersville. You and I couldn't get in the truck and drive 30 minutes in any direction, anywhere in this state, and not find a bridge Kit Bond helped build, a mile of road, a sewer pipe, a water pipe, a runway, a building at an educational institution. I mean, I don't think there any Missourians ever left the mark on this state that Kit Bond has.
Yeah, he did a lot of great things. He will be missed. I never came across anyone had anything bad to say about him. It was a big loss for the state.
And even in the way he helped select his successor. I mean, enormous shoes to fill. But boy, he picked the right guy in Roy Blunt to fill them. Yeah,
he did, definitely. And a good chain of folks.
And then looking forward, the times change, the world's different, but I thought it was a wonderful, fitting tribute to Kit Bond and Roy Blunt that when Eric Schmidt brought that fighter wing to Boeing in St. Louis, big accomplishment, heavily competitive fighter wing that all over the country folks were fighting for. When he brought that home to Missouri, folks said, that's a Kit Bond thing. That's a Roy Blunt thing. I mean, you've left a legacy when someone else has a great accomplishment and they say that's in fitting with your legacy.
Yeah, like I said, you can't come across anyone in the state, wherever you go. There are a lot of good things because he delivered so much for so many people across the state, from corner to corner.
All right, so Betsy, the district is essentially the city of Springfield, right?
Correct. Yep.
Pretty much just city proper?
Yeah, it goes a little bit outside, but ultimately, yeah, the city of Springfield is in SD 30.
And it's been Republican, Norma Champion. I'm trying to think back. When is that? It's been Democrat, but
It's been a
long
while.
time,
Yeah,
right?
been a while.
But it's been changing. There's a changing demographics of the city of Springfield.
I think that's right. When I was first elected, Crystal Quaid was the only Democrat in the southern half of the state. I became the second, and I was elected in 2020. Stephanie Hine became the third in the cycle after, so we now have 3 elected Democrats in the city of Springfield.
So was there 6 members in the city of Springfield?
Yeah, there are 5 House districts that are completely in, or at least a majority in, and then a few that have a little part of Springfield, or SD 30.
And you, your whole career, you start off with a legacy of your own. The Faughn name is very well known in Springfield, and I think very highly respected.
Thank you.
It's got to, I mean, however you do these races, Mark, I mean, that's a big advantage.
No, definitely, especially when races like this start up, everybody's going to do polling just to see where they sit. And in the beginning, before the campaign start, obviously the polling is all about name ID. So that's a huge advantage from the jump.
That is a nice way to start off. Fundraising, you've always been able to fundraise, especially for a Houseman, pretty well. But really, with 2 competitive Senate races, the Democrats can fund 2, right? I mean, you're not going to match the Republicans dollar for dollar, likely.
Probably not.
But
yeah.
you'll be able to, whatever. What does a campaign cost in Springfield?
My goal would be to raise about $2 million.
And that's PAC and
Yep,
yeah.
all in, about $2 million.
And the Democrats can help with that. The state infrastructure that 3D Doug runs, they can actually. I mean, to me, if you took $2 million for 2 races, that'd be $4 million. That is something. I don't know if the Democrats could compete and fund 8 races, but 2 seems like they could fund.
Yeah, and of course, Senator Tracy McCreary will be back on the ballot, so I know that's everyone's primary goal is making sure that she retains that seat. And then
Tracy's fine.
after that, I just never want to take anything for granted. And then after that, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Senate District 30. To your point earlier, it's been a competitive seat and becoming increasingly more so. And I think it'll be one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive race in 26.
We have yourself, and then Carrie Engel in Lee Summit.
Correct.
Competitive. Republican, that seat's been Republican, I think, longer than, guys, that goes back to the 90s, maybe even earlier, it's been Republican. But again, demographics are changing. Demographics change in Jefferson County to the Republicans' way. I think in West County, St. Louis, and in places like Lee Summit and Springfield, the demographics are changing toward the Democrats.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think 26 should be a relatively good year for Democrats. I don't want to say that too prematurely because I've thought that before and been wrong, but I think it'll be all right.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Like I've heard many people say, "Oh, the Trump stuff's over. Oh, people are tired of this." The Republicans haven't had a really bad election cycle since '08. You're coming up on 20 years of good cycles. A lot of the ingredients are there for the Democrats to have a good cycle, but that's been the case before.
Yeah.
It
we
feels
got to
like
capitalize
Democrats,
on it.
Well, it feels like Republicans always find a social issue, whether it's men trying to play women's sports, whether it's defund the police, whatever it is. It feels like the Republicans are very good about finding usually a social issue, and the Democrats just walk into the trap.
Yeah, it's easier to create a fictional problem and run on that than it is to talk about the fact that you helped pass a $50 billion budget. So kudos to Republicans for doing that.
Well, I mean, they were there for it. I think you and the Senate really did a lot of that. I think it goes to a bigger point. I think there's a lot of folks in Springfield that folks think could be a good state senator, and do a good job, frankly. I've 2 or 3 candidates I've heard discussed, I think would do a good job.
Yeah.
But I think the truth is the state Senate needs more Democrats.
Yeah, I
It
think
was on display last night.
absolutely. I would not have ran for office if I lived in a state where there was balance or where Democrats had power. I loved my job before. I was very happy. I ran to balance out a Missouri House of Representatives that just had no balance. We have, super majorities in both chambers. Now all of our statewide office holders are Republicans. A bill can be passed out of one house, sent to the other, and signed by the governor without needing a single Democratic vote. And I think that is where you see bad policy. And, I would hope to do my part in the state Senate to bring more balance.
I actually think, and Mark, you've watched this a long time, I think you'd have better Republican policies with more Democrats elected in the legislature.
No, absolutely. I think, the majority of Missourians are somewhere in the middle. But when you have super majorities of Republicans, some of the policies get crazier, especially with the primaries, and you have extreme candidates getting through the primaries, and then it leads to contentious arguments within the Republican Party when it comes to passing policy. But if it were a little more evened out, a little more balanced, and you needed votes from both sides to get things passed, you'd have a little more common sense brought to the table, for sure.
That's the key word, is common sense. It's you do, and I get it though. If the state is dominated by one party, you're going to run to the base of that party. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem is, I feel a little sad for some folks. I mean, imagine getting elected today. Republicans have had the majority for almost 25 years. They've had a supermajority for almost 15. They've had the supermajority and the governor for almost 10. Almost every big Republican thing you want to do has been done or tried. So it's almost frustrating. So I understand why they spin into deeper and deeper. everything that's good, you could take it too far to where it's not. And I think they've taken things where it's good, but there's pressure. You want to accomplish things. Politicians get elected. You want to do things. If you're a Democrat if the Democrats took the majority now, you have a whole smorgasbord of things you could do. Yeah. On the common sense Democrat plate of priorities. The Republicans have pretty well run through that buffet of Republican projects, and it has been a quarter century. They probably should have, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a Republican coming in, if you want to show that you are, pro Second Amendment and everything has been done, I mean, you have to really go extreme to the pro Second Amendment. If you want to show that you're pro-life, you have to go extreme to the pro-life, because all of those, the low-hanging fruit has been done, even the high-hanging fruit has been done. So now it's just going to the extreme to show your loyalties to certain causes.
Yeah, I think some examples I can think of that, we obviously talk about abortion a lot in the building. My first or second year, we passed a bill, or we debated passing a bill that would force a woman to spend her life in jail if she terminated an ectopic pregnancy. And that's an example of why we need more Democrats and, quite frankly, more women in the building, because almost everybody knows that an ectopic pregnancy is a non-viable pregnancy, and the only way through that is to terminate it. But those are the kinds of conversations that we have. We're having conversations about limiting access to birth control, limiting access to IVF. And again, to Dalton's point, I think that's what happens when one party gets too big. There's nowhere to go but bad ideas.
There's some truth to that. I do think, if you like Republicans to succeed, I've always been a Republican, I have no bones about that. I'm not sure that the current balance of the legislature is conducive to producing serious, good Republican policies. Let's talk about the legislature right now. You were a big part, as a ranking member on the House Budget Committee. You were a big part of the budget. Tell me about some good things you saw in that budget.
Yeah, House Democrats, when we started the year, outlined 3 priorities. 1, fully funding the foundation formula. 2, fully funding the child care subsidies and honoring the governor's promise to pay based on enrollment, not attendance, and paying our providers at the beginning of the month and not the end, and eliminating the $50 million of voucher money that a majority of House Democrats just aren't in favor of. And through the end of the budget project, we were able to get 2 of those, or process, we were able to get 2 of those 3 major things funded. And I was really proud that House Democrats were the deciding vote on that. And then we got, I think, 75 line items as House Democrats in the budget: projects, infrastructure, projects back home, nonprofit funding. House Democrats had a good year.
You almost had, to me, it would have been a very successful budget year. You could argue about the charter school stuff, but at the end of the day, in 27, Governor Keogh is going to come in here and demolish all of the educational pillars the state has and rebuild it. So I don't know. To me, okay, $50 million for charter schools, they're going to get a lot more than $50 million in 2 years. It doesn't seem like it's that big a deal.
Big deal to me.
But I'm just saying, I'm not sure. Typically, the House has been willing to sacrifice a lot of budget items to get charter school funding in whatever form you want to call it. I think those wins aren't as big when you're, 2 years away from them probably getting a windfall. I don't know that the money doesn't matter as much, because 2 years from now, you're going to see Katie bar the door.
In my 5 years here, we have every year taken significant steps to privatize education under a guise of school choice. And every year we're told, if we can just do this thing, if we can just do this, then we'll leave schools alone. If we can just have this tax credit program, then we'll be okay. And then fast forward 2 years, and the governor puts, for the first time ever, general revenue into funding private schools for kids.
But
Some
it's the
people
way
think
the
that's a
state-
good thing. I do not. I think public education is the core of a country that I'm proud to live in. And when you look at the websites of these schools, they don't educate all children. They don't allow or accept students that might have some level of a disability. Again, I think that that is the core of what makes America the greatest country in the world, is that every child has access to a free and public quality education. We need to continue to work on the quality part. I'm not saying our public schools are perfect, but I think a lot of the struggles that they have are more of a reflection of society than they are our educational system.
It's totally true, Mark. Though, I mean, there's an intransigence in the public education establishment. There's a lack of change. They just remind me of people that there's legitimate problems, and they kind of just would look you in the eye and say, "There's nothing to see here." It reminds me of Officer Barbrady on South Park. Actually, nothing to see here. Looky-loos, move along. There are problems. I mean, I think, however you want to slice it up. These Republicans, most of them will say, yeah, I'm for school choice. Some of them not in a campaign, but most of them actually will. I think COVID opened some eyes. I don't think public education looked good when they did. And I think a lot of folks have met their superintendent and they're like, what? What? I met Aaron Cornman. I used to be the biggest critic of these things, but I don't know how to defend a system. If they have money to pay Aaron Cornman, then they've got too much money. I mean, the public is turning, and with this, I don't think one Republican will lose a race because they put money into the voucher program. Do you?
I don't know. I mean, to say a Republican would lose a race because of that, I think we've seen some of that actually.
Okay, where? I'm interested in that.
And I know the NEA played heavily in some races, and they were successful. I think
that
probably
issue
more so in primaries, when you have that issue come up. It's very important in primaries.
On the Democrat or Republican side?
On the Democrat side more so than the Republican side, but
Yeah,
I think it can be.
I'm of the opinion, and I'd be very interested in your take. I get the point. I don't know that I have an argument for you. I just think the voters have shown time and time again, either they don't care or they're fine with their legislator doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's a messaging and maybe a translation issue to the voters or to the public.
Well, the public school people have no ability to message. It's
Well,
almost sad.
and if I agree with Betsy on this. I mean, I think, yeah, some of the districts are not perfect, but that doesn't mean you abandon that system. You should focus on trying to fix that system, and the thought of taking public taxpayers' dollars to help fund parents to send their kids to private school, which is a choice that they make, should not be the route we take instead of trying to fix the public schools.
I tend to agree with you, but I think the truth is, school choice is coming. I mean, it's coming to Missouri. I had a lot of Democrat friends that's like, oh, that primary, Mike Keogh's got to win, and I'm like, be careful, because I could have seen a scenario where Bill Eigel comes in, attacks the legislature, they lock up and don't do anything. Mike Kehoe, he will win. He is a winner, and I think he's going to win on school choice.
I think you'll win probably in the short term. I think long term people are going to recognize that it's not a correct move or a move being done on behalf of kids. I think it is fiscally irresponsible, and I think people are going to miss having community schools where on a Friday night everyone shows up to watch the basketball team. I think we are going to come back to a time when public education is something that both sides of the aisle fight for. Rural Republicans and Democrats historically have stood together on this issue, and it's been sad to watch some of those Republicans peel off.
In the House, they just do what they're told.
In the House. But privately, and you know this, Scott, a lot of them will come up to me and say, thank you so much. We were really concerned about the foundation formula, and I just didn't feel like I could say anything. And that is, again, an example of what happens when one party gets too big, is that I've never once felt like I can't say what I feel in my caucus or on the floor.
Neither did Marlene Terry.
That is correct.
But I think most House Republicans, it's thank you, sir, may I have another. I mean, they're not going to, whatever leadership tells them, they're just going to do.
Yeah, I think we saw that on House Bill 19. People were willing to tank hospitals in their own district out of fear of, I don't know what the fear is.
Let's talk House Bill 19. You're the ranking member on budget. I have heard the budget chairman and you say you enjoyed working with each other. It was a collaborative process.
Very much.
Look, I think the House made a calculated decision. Same decision they've made 5 of the last 6 years. We're going to, if you give us more charter funding, however you gets there, right? then we will pretty much give you the Senate a lot of ability to write a lot of the other budget. Not all of it, but a lot, right? And that was from the outside looking in what they did. Am I wrong?
Historically, yeah, I think there's been some truth to that.
Then they come up with some funding projects around the state. Crime lab in Poplar Bluff, right? The library in Rolla, the hospital in Salem, Missouri, which is probably going to close now.
I think that's right.
A nuclear reactor at the University of Missouri System that does cancer research for all over the world. And they just skipped it. Did they tell you? I think they told the governor's staff.
It was not communicated to me. I thought it was kind of interesting when I was asked to do my thank yous on House Bill 17, which that's an in the bubble thing, but for me, that was a signal that something was off. We recessed for 30 minutes and didn't really get a clear explanation why. The chairman came back, made motions on 18, skipped 19, and then said for the last time today, I'm going to make a motion on 20. And then came over immediately to me, pulled me off the floor, and we had a conversation in the back of the chamber, and that was how I was made aware that they were going to kill $520 million worth of infrastructure projects.
And am I wrong that the Senate took all of the House recommendations?
You're not wrong. That's correct.
So there was nothing in it that the House didn't ask for except the Senate priorities.
I think that's right. And an important caveat to that is, my role as ranking, I oftentimes have members of the majority who come to me and ask me for help to get their stuff in the budget. We've had conversations about how it can be helpful to House Republicans when we know that historically, and this year is no different, the chairman wants to make less investments than the governor's budget and less investments than the Senate might project. So a lot of the projects that you saw in 19 that were put in on the Senate side of the building were put in there by Senator Huff for House members, and then those same House members turned on him. And that's the part that I'm really struggling to get over. One of the many parts that I'm struggling to get over.
I thought it was interesting and maybe telling about term limits, whatever supermajority we're going to call it. I text 32 House members whose districts had projects and had them taken away. It shocked me. Probably a third of the responses were, yeah, screw my district, I don't care. Or some nonsense about, something in the House, the Senate didn't get in time. Now 2/3 of them were like, on the record, this is ridiculous, and like Rudy Veit, he don't mix words. He says how it is. But you had, especially in freshmen, they were like, well, the chairman told me to say this, and And I'm like, well, why do you drive all the way to Jeff City? Just be a doormat, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was interesting. It almost Shakespeare couldn't write any different. So Friday, the House pulls the rug out from St. Joseph, Salem, Poplar Bluff, Cape Girardeau. I mean, go around the state.
Yeah.
Then my personal belief is they've had a framework of a deal for a stadium for some time. Stadium funding projects are very unpopular, especially for Republican voters. It's a tough vote. He held this right up until the moment that he held it right up until he couldn't, right? He came in and give it to the House, and then all of a sudden, magically, there's no money for a crime lab. So if you're a rape victim in Southeast Missouri, the backlog is very delayed on tasting a rape kit. There was money in this budget to put a crime lab and update it so you could take care of that backlog. There was no $15 million for that. But now there's $300 million to fund one of the worst sports franchises in the history of the organized sport. A team that has a 20,000 seat stadium and could barely get 2,000 people to show up, including the beer salesman. It was almost Shakespearean how all of a sudden the budget chair, who's by the way his park, building a state park in Pineville, it was in the budget that passed. But now there's money for a Royals stadium.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, number one, to see how the majority party voted kind of in totality, but secondary to that, how the budget chair voted. There were just so many projects in House Bill 19, a foster care building in Bates County, hospitals that I think you're right, probably one or two of them will close, a mental health facility that we've been working on for years. And I think a lot of people think we stuck it to Lincoln on this. Well, Senator Huff didn't have a lot himself in 19. What they did was Dave
Griffith and Rudy Veit, I don't know what they did to that guy, but he just knifed them.
It was, yeah. And yeah, I won't speculate
Tara
on the rest
Peters,
of that.
what did she
but
do to anybody? Lord.
Yeah.
They came right at her jugular.
There was a lot there, but it was interesting to hear the chair speak so highly of the stadium funding. I'll talk about my vote. I voted for it, but part of my rationale was no matter how much money we have on the bottom line.
So you don't believe the House Budget Chairman when he says you didn't have enough money, or what? I mean how could both
Scott,
be true? We don't have enough money for this.
Yeah,
we have
we
enough money
all
for that.
can look to see how much money a budget bill is spending, and we all can look to see how much money that leaves on the bottom line. The chair having this expectation of keeping a certain amount in the bank was not communicated with me, was not communicated to my understanding to Senator Huff. So I don't know why the House Republican Caucus was so committed to that number. Quite frankly, I think most of the people in the House Republican Caucus think that there are $50 million in our budget, not $50 billion, based on informal conversations I've had with them. So why all of a sudden they were committed to $1.3 billion at the expense of their hospitals staying open is beyond me. But
is this a wake-up call, do you think, to your Republican colleagues to say, okay, we got to get more informed here. It is a process where, frankly, if you're not on budget, you kind of wake up that day and third read these bills.
Yeah, I think, we spend hundreds of hours in that budget room, and I don't expect every member to understand every single line item. I do expect members to, at a baseline, question when their leadership is telling them that they're going to kill projects in their districts. You'd think that someone in that caucus maybe would have stood up and said, hey, my hospital staying open is more important than some arbitrary number that I'm hearing at the last minute. And it didn't seem like anybody did that.
So let's talk about the stadium. Your heart goes out to Kehoe, right? I mean, Mike Kehoe, the plan he had was outstanding. You hold it till the end, get the budget done, then you say, okay, you got to take this or leave this, get it done. The House does it, right? You have a speaker from Kansas City, and I have no idea. I tried to listen to the debate. For the life of me, I couldn't understand how you don't do 19, but you do a stadium for a team with no fans. I don't understand how.
Chiefs have a lot of fans.
Well, Chiefs have a lot of fans.
Royals have a lot of fans. You're just not one of them.
Where will they be at the next game? Where were they at the last home game?
I have several caucus members who are very rabid Kansas City Royals fans, and I'm not going to get in the middle of that as a Springfieldian.
Well, so they'll be out of session this week, right? So I'm sure next week all your colleagues will be at the game, correct?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Yeah, because I don't even know if it's on TV anymore. But I doubt if we actually. I'll tell you what. I'll buy the tickets. I think they're readily available. You and I will go to the next game Tuesday, and we'll meet all your colleagues that are there, right?
All right, deal.
All the Royals fans that are there.
Deal. Except I think you'd rather die than spend money to go see the Royals play. But
I don't think it costs much. And we won't have to stay long because we can meet all the fans and probably be done by the third inning. So anyhow, I'm watching this go through. And the Senate is like, yeah, no. I mean, some of the senators are just going to. I felt bad for Kehoe because this was one of the best sports stadium funding strategies I've ever seen.
yeah,
The House passes this. They get it right to the Senate floor. These things do not get more popular as time goes on. Kehoe had it all set up. And you have to feel like somewhere Friday, he was up doing governor stuff. And he sees what the House does. And he knows what he's going to do on Monday and Tuesday, right? He knows he's waiting and got everything kind of primed. Terrific strategy. And then he sees it. He's got to be like, Jesus, I have to. This is the crew. I have to carry through this. I mean, he had it. Mark, it would have happened, except Dirk Deaton stuck the knife right in Patrick Mahomes' back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Friday with 19 was probably one of the dumbest things that I've seen. And I've been here for 11, 12 years, sessions. It was, hands down one of the dumbest things. I mean, those are, I think there was a thought that they're going to, stink it to Lincoln somehow, whatever that thought process is. It's really cutting off their nose to spite their face. But I mean, they really took out over $500 million in capital improvement projects, construction projects. Those are good, prevailing wage paying jobs that the state is going to lose out on, so that they can have extra money in the bank. So instead of having, an excess of money in the bank, that money was going to be invested into projects, into the people of Missouri, which was a good thing. And instead that rug was pulled out. And the timing on it, with that happening on Friday, and then, I mean, I know you're saying it's a great strategy to. I don't know how great the strategy is to not include so many people on discussions about the stadium
Would it have
and then
helped?
roll it out. Well, yes. I mean, I know yesterday morning about 9 o'clock, there was a lot of people that were pro stadium that were scrambling to get other people involved, us as well, labor involved.
No, wait a minute. You weren't brought in?
No, 9 a.m.
Okay.
yesterday. So no, not one discussion.
Okay, 9 a.m. yesterday, though. I think that's when they were bringing people in.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure
it's,
you were at the end of the line. I think you might have been closer to the front. If you were getting talked to at 9 a.m., you might have been closer to the front of the line.
That's
than the
why
back
I'm
of the
saying,
line.
my thought. I don't think the best strategy is to exclude everyone and then drop a plan that no one has had any input or even involvement in, and then saying, "Hey, help us get across the finish line."
Yeah, when it has, to your comment earlier, a fiscal note of about $300 million, that's not in 1 year, obviously, but that's still a lot of money to talk about, and that happens to be the exact same number of general revenue that we killed in House Bill 19. That's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people who
It's also totally at
about
war
that
with
work.
logic.
Yeah, and I think I can have some level of sympathy for Governor Kehoe that his plan is not going, maybe potentially not going to come to fruition because of a decision that Chairman Deaton made, but he has the ability to call us back for a special session and address House Bill 19. If he wanted a path out, he has the tools in his tool belt. He seems unwilling to do it. So,
Well, let me. Every governor, when the legislature screws something up, then they say, "Oh, special session," and the governor's like, "I didn't screw this up. I mean, Governor Mike Kehoe didn't screw this up. This was Dirk Deaton." And I guess I don't know who else you'd name with that, but I mean, he's the chairman. He's going to take the blame and get the credit. I disagree with you on that, Mark. I think on the strategic level, Republican primary voters, which frankly are the folks in this state who matter the most, if you want the truth, as far as who's going to lead this state. Right now in our state's history, there was a time when Democratic primary voters were the key people that elected Warren Hearns, and you go to some of these older signs here. Republican voters will not like this. This will be this will only get more unpopular. Radio host, which I'm going to do Pete Mundo at top of the hour talking Kit Bond, and I'm sure some of this. This will not age well. And I think Mike Kehoe knew it, and the more it was talked about and the more advance notice you had, the more opposition. But I think it was truly, I guess I see your point. I like to do things like you're talking. That's how I like to do things, right? But I'm not, I think in this, if your goal was to get this done, if your goal was to notch another Mike Kehoe win, I think this was the best strategy.
Well, yeah, I still disagree. I mean, to an extent, to not get your pool too big on getting people involved. I understand that, because the more people you get involved, the more decisions are going to have to be made and the more
People are gonna talk.
opinions you're going to have.
And they're gonna leak
I
it.
understand that. But when you're
And-
talking about, when we get this to the legislature, and in all fairness, you're correct. If Friday did not happen with HB 19, this would have been a
It's
different
done.
discussion. But when you're going to need people that really have some influence in the Capitol to help you get across the finish line, you should bring those people in. And to come in, really a half an hour before caucus and say, hey, we are going to really need help from you on this. I know you know nothing about it, have never seen the amendment that's going to drop, but we really need your help.
I would say there's very few Mark Daltons. I think the more people you had that conversation with, again, the pragmatic fact you have is that the Republican primary voters, the people that elect that supermajority, are not going to like this.
No.
I mean, I remember back in the day, the Cardinals, which, the Chiefs and the Cardinals have always been like every politician. When Mike Parson was going to run statewide, all of a sudden I saw a Chiefs and Cardinals helmet in his office, Senate office, right? Very, very popular teams. When they Jack Buck, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson came and testified, and that vote was hung around Catherine Hanaway's neck 10 years later when she ran for governor. Stadium funding is very unpopular amongst Republican primary voters. I think that makes it hard to do, and I think the more people that hear about this, the more pushback you're going to get. It's not like this project's going to get. The more you learn about it, the more people are going to support it. I think it's going to be the opposite.
No, they just had a vote in Kansas City about the stadiums, and that did not turn out well. And then, but like most things, if the voters don't get it the way that some people in leadership want, they come to the legislature to have them pass it. And yeah, it's not going to go well with the public that literally just voted against similar projects.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say I do think it's somewhat hypocritical and ironic that the majority party, including leadership, was so willing to vote on an amendment that is going to cost our state hundreds of millions of dollars that they had access to for 30 minutes, but were unwilling to vote for a budget bill that they had had their hands on for days and did so under a guise of not having enough information.
Shakespeare couldn't have put them in a bigger box than they were put in.
Yeah.
And again, I still think in the day, because I do have a sense of how unpopular this will be. The more it's discussed, the more it's out there, the more right-wing influencers get a hold of this. You're not going to have anybody for it. It's going to be 100% against it. I guess I thought it was a good plan. Now let's see how it gets done. So apparently the Senate leadership was willing to say, okay, we'll roll over for the House. We'll just do whatever the Speaker says. We're in. And I noticed there was a filibuster started. Senator Huff, some Democrats. Senator Coleman made a great look. If you're the Republican activist who's actually paying attention to the end of session, and Senator Coleman, who's a very articulate speaker, so the floor and says we have Prop A that's about to decimate small business. We have Amendment 3 that children are going to be killed in the womb. These are all priorities of they're priorities of the Republican Party. That's what they've been saying for 5 months. These are our priorities, and they spend the fourth to the last day of session on a stadium bill that whatever you think of it was not a priority to anybody, right? So I think that is what I think she is saying what your average primary voter will hear, and I will tell you, I believe that as the folks in the House run for state Senate, this will be the first attack ad. Now, credit to them for knowing that and still voting for it. I mean, I generally respect people that put the state above themselves, and if you felt like this was, and the Democrat voters are going to care, but I think on the Republican side, I noticed Representative Stinnett voted no. I think that's smart. I think her primary voters absolutely would be against this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Scott, but I don't want to be part of the General Assembly who loses one of the best things about this state. And I will speak specifically to the Chiefs because I'm a Cardinals fan myself and don't have a lot of love for the Royals. But, it is, I would rather.
You said you knew a lot of fans of theirs.
I didn't say I was one.
By the way, I have a fact check. We don't fact check on the show, but Kelton came in. Way to go, Kelton. Guess where the Royals rank in home attendance out of 30 major league teams? It's not 30.
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
It's not 30. It's somewhere between a little better, 26th.
I mean, that is consistent with the way Missouri ranks in almost every metric.
Two teams are not in their home stadium. They're in minor league park, so it's really probably 27 of 28. But still, they beat somebody has fewer fans than them. I don't really know how.
Yeah, admittedly, I am invested in this because of the Chiefs, not the Royals. But we have demonstrated as a General Assembly that no matter how much money we have in the bank, we are not going to make the investments that I want to see. I would rather these dollars go to keeping the Chiefs here, keeping good-paying jobs here, keeping small businesses afloat here, than giving continued tax breaks to wealthy people.
It's funny
across the state.
Yeah, and you were saying this when I was in the House gallery while the stadium bill was being discussed yesterday, and I heard other people in the gallery as the discussions were going on, and they were talking about, I can see the attack ads now, just having some, cancer patient, a kid that is trying to get access, and you have a picture of these legislators that taking money from that person who needs it and putting it in the pocket of billionaires that own these teams. And that was the discussion that was going on.
So it passes the House. Great work by Kehoe, his staff. Great work by Speaker Patterson. I generally think when John Patterson's engaged on something, it goes well. I mean, John Patterson's a very competent guy. I'm not sure how he let the budget thing get so screwed up, but I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest defenders and promoters of John. John Patterson has the kind of common sense and intelligence you need in state government. I don't know where that was Friday afternoon. But it comes over to the Senate, and shockingly as hell, the senators are like, okay, well, whatever, Mr. Speaker, we're in. But there was a filibuster. Some folks said, no. If you don't have enough money to do this, we're not doing that. And I love you, Governor Kehoe, but and again, if you're Mike Kehoe, you got to be thinking, Jesus, these people. I mean, If they would just let me run things and just shut up, it would be so much better.
But then he's a bit of a dictator if we just do
I'm not sure
everything he
dictator
says.
wouldn't be better than what I saw Friday afternoon. But so if someone's going to be a dictator, who would you pick, Kehoe or Deaton?
I'm not answering that question.
Yeah, because we all know how you'd answer. But no, seriously, I've heard some people talk about some fixes for this. One is a special session. I think a special session is a bloodbath for Republicans, an absolute nightmare. I think Mike Kehoe could get this done in a special session. I think his
They got us into this mess. I don't care if it's a bloodbath. They need to get us out. Like,
Well, if you're
3
Mike
people
Kehoe, though-
single-handedly killed a budget bill that's only been done 1 or 2 other times in our state's history, that quite literally is going to keep hospitals open, people free from cancer, foster kids safe. Like, there were a lot of important projects in that. I am still very mad about the actions of House Republican leadership on
There's
Friday.
some senators that agree with you.
I think so too. I think I'm in the majority for once on sentiment towards House Republican
If you had
leadership.
to give up or down vote on competency at leadership, you
and
might be in the majority
to your
now.
point earlier, Scott, I
Even
have
amongst their
seen very
caucus.
few missteps from Speaker Patterson and Floor Leader Riley. They have ran this year very well. I give a lot of I have a lot of respect
Absolutely.
there.
Totally agree with you.
That Friday was such a departure. You managed to, most importantly, not bring money home for your district, but second to that, make almost every single person in that building mad, which is hard to accomplish in a day's work.
It's a lot. It's like a construction project. You can mess up a lot of little things, right? You can be an eighth of an inch off on a piece of trim or something. But if you don't connect the sewer pipe, you can't mess up the big things. And if you'd have asked me, would John Patterson have ever, I would have said, no way. I just view him as that competent. So now, but talking about fixes, I've heard some fixes last night, so people were kicking around ideas. They said that obviously the deadline for appropriations bills was Friday at 6. That's gone. I've heard some theories that, okay, the operating bills have to be passed by Friday at 6, but you can pass these other bills before then. So the House just goes, passes 19. Then I think the Senate passes the stadium bill in short order, right?
I'm in the camp that believes that we can't do any appropriations bills after 6 p.m. the Friday before session ends. I don't think we can bring up that bill this week. Speaking of
Why?
bills, I have to get to my budget committee
Yeah.
hearing in 15 minutes, so I'm going to leave you fellas to it.
We'll just sign off here. Thank you so much for the time. Good luck in the campaign.
Thank
Hope
you
you'll
so
come
much.
back and talk about it here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Absolutely.
Mark Dalton, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. And we're going to let her get to work. We'll be back tomorrow with a TWMP Daily. And then Sunday, This Week in Missouri Politics, our session wrap-up. I knew what time you had to leave and was going to get you out on time. We'll see you tomorrow.